Welcome back to the channel. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a faded brown penny so ordinary that you would barely glance at it. Yet that tiny piece of copper could secretly carry a legend whispered through decades of American history, a legend so powerful that collectors, historians, and treasure hunters still chase it today. Because the 1940 no-mint Mark 1 cent wheat penny is not just a coin, but a time capsule from a nation standing on the edge of global war, economic recovery, and industrial transformation, and this single year, struck quietly at the Philadelphia Mint without a mint mark, has become one of the most talked about and myth-shrouded pennies ever discussed, with stories of ultra-rare anomalies, experimental compositions, undocumented test strikes, and mysterious survivor specimens that have driven its legendary valuation as high as $49 million in collector lore. And the reason this humble wheat penny captures so much imagination is because 1940 was not an ordinary year for the United States Mint, as America was still healing from the Great Depression while preparing, knowingly or not, for the massive demands of World War II, creating intense pressure on metal supplies, machinery, and minting processes, which opened the door for subtle deviations that only the sharpest eyes would ever notice. Deviations that today are believed to exist in only one or two surviving examples locked away in private collections or vaults, unseen by the public, and according to long-circulated accounts among elite numismatists, a microscopic group of 1940 no-mint Mark wheat pennies were struck under unusual conditions using experimental planchets, transitional alloy blends, or improperly prepared blanks that were never meant to leave the mint floor, yet somehow did, slipping into circulation unnoticed and blending in with millions of ordinary cents until time slowly erased most of them, leaving behind a near-mythical survivor, whose surface, weight, and strike characteristics defy standard mint records. And what makes this penny even more captivating is that on the surface it looks almost identical to common wheat cents that people have spent, lost, or discarded for generations, featuring Abraham Lincoln on the obverse with a calm, dignified profile, and the familiar wheat ears framing the words on the reverse. But hidden within that simplicity are minute differences that transform it from pocket change into a crown jewel of American coinage. Differences like an unusually sharp strike that reveals die preparation far beyond normal production standards, a subtle doubling in critical design areas that does not match any officially recorded double die variety, and a weight deviation so slight that only precision instruments can detect it, suggesting a metal composition experiment possibly tied to wartime research into copper alternatives. And as stories go, a small number of these coins were allegedly set aside by mint workers who sensed their uniqueness, passing them quietly through hands until one surfaced decades later in pristine condition, sparking intense debate when it was examined by experts who realized it did not align with any known catalog variety. And from that moment the legend grew, fueled by auction house whispers, private sales conducted behind closed doors, and valuations that climbed from thousands to millions as the coin's mystery deepened rather than resolved, because, unlike many famous errors, this penny's origins were never officially acknowledged, leaving its backstory suspended between documented history and numismatic folklore. And that uncertainty is exactly what drives its astronomical worth, as collectors are not just buying metal but the unanswered questions of how and why it exists, and the idea that something so small survived untouched through wartime rationing, mass melting of copper, and decades of circulation makes it feel almost miraculous. Especially when you consider that countless wheat pennies were destroyed, corroded, or simply spent without a second thought, yet this one endured, carrying with it the fingerprint of a critical moment in American industrial history. And adding to its mystique is the fact that 1940 Philadelphia cents were produced in enormous numbers, which paradoxically makes the existence of an ultra-rare anomaly within that flood of coins even more astonishing, because finding a single undocumented variation among hundreds of millions is like finding a grain of sand that tells a completely different story than the beach it came from. and collectors believe that the $49 million valuation reflects not just rarity, but the convergence of perfect condition, historical timing, and unanswered provenance. As this penny represents the last calm before the storm of wartime composition changes that would soon redefine American coinage, making it a symbolic bridge between eras, and when advanced imaging and metallurgical analysis were applied to the rumored specimen, reports claim that trace elements were found that do not perfectly match standard bronze formulas of the era, hinting at experimental batches that may have been quietly tested before the public copper-saving measures of the early 1940s, and if true, that would place this penny at the center of a hidden chapter of mint experimentation, turning it into a physical artifact of decisions made behind closed government doors. And while skeptics argue that such valuations are exaggerated, believers counter that the private numismatic market operates on a different scale entirely, where singular pieces with irreplaceable stories command sums that seem unbelievable to outsiders, and the fact that this coin has never appeared in a public auction only amplifies its aura, because what is unseen often becomes more powerful than what is displayed. And so the legend persists, inspiring people to recheck old jars, inherited collections, and forgotten rolls of wheat pennies, hoping against all odds that they might stumble upon a piece of history worth more than most mansions, and even if the chances are microscopic, the dream itself keeps the story alive, because the idea that a simple penny from 1940 could hold the weight of $49 million reminds us that history often hides in plain sight, waiting for the right eyes to recognize it. And that is why this wheat penny continues to dominate conversations, videos, and late-night searches, not because everyone will find one, but because the possibility alone transforms ordinary change into a potential treasure. Next, 1946 No Mint Mark I Cent USA Wheat Penny. Picture a single penny resting quietly in the palm of your hand, its surface darkened by age, its design familiar, its weight barely noticeable. Yet behind that modest appearance lies a story so powerful and so deeply woven into American history that it has elevated the 1946 No Mint Mark I Cent USA Wheat Penny into legendary status, a coin spoken of in hushed tones among elite collectors and valued in historical lore at an astonishing $43 million, because this penny was born at a crossroads moment when the world was emerging from the ashes of World War II, industries were resetting, metal supplies were shifting back from wartime priorities, and the United States Mint was transitioning from emergency production conditions into peacetime normalcy, a transition that was anything but smooth and created the perfect environment for anomalies, undocumented variations, and experimental processes to quietly slip through unnoticed. And the 1946 Philadelphia wheat penny without a mint mark represents that fragile moment of change more clearly than almost any other coin, making it far more than currency and turning it into a symbol of survival, adaptation, and hidden value. Because while millions of ordinary 1946 wheat cents were struck and circulated, a microscopic number are believed to have been produced under extraordinary circumstances involving leftover wartime materials, altered die states, and planchets, prepared during a period when mint equipment was still worn from relentless wartime use. And according to long-standing numismatic accounts, at least one example emerged that did not conform to any officially recorded specifications, showing subtle but undeniable characteristics that separate it from common issues. Characteristics so rare and so historically significant that they have driven its valuation into the realm of unimaginable wealth. And what makes this penny's story even more captivating is that 1946 marked the return to the traditional bronze composition after the steel cents of 1943 and the composition adjustments that followed, meaning the mint was once again dealing with copper alloys while simultaneously phasing out emergency protocols, creating opportunities for transitional blends, off-metal strikes, or improperly mixed alloy batches that could produce pennies with unique weights, tones, and metallurgical fingerprints. And experts who have studied the legendary specimen associated with the $43 million valuation claim that its metal composition does not align perfectly with standard post-war bronze formulas, suggesting it may have been struck on an experimental or transitional planchet using leftover wartime materials or early test blends intended to recalibrate mint operations. And this possibility alone elevates the coin from rare to irreplaceable, because it represents a tangible artifact of the mint's behind the scenes struggle to return to normalcy after years of extreme pressure. And visually, the coin is deceptively simple, bearing Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait on the obverse and the classic wheat ears on the reverse. Yet under magnification the strike quality appears unusually sharp in some areas and unusually soft in others, indicating inconsistent pressure or die wear. And this inconsistency is believed to be linked to dies that were either hastily refurbished or nearing the end of their lifespan after wartime overuse. And adding to the mystery are faint anomalies in the lettering and date that do not match known double die varieties, suggesting either die deterioration patterns that were never catalogued or the use of experimental hubbing techniques during the post-war reset. And because official mint records from this transitional period are incomplete, fragmented, or silent on many small-scale tests and adjustments, these anomalies exist in a gray area where documentation ends and physical evidence begins, making the coin a puzzle that modern experts can study but never fully explain. And that unresolved nature is precisely what fuels its immense value, because collectors are not simply acquiring a penny but the unanswered questions of an entire era. And stories persist of a single 1946 no-mint mark-wheat penny discovered decades later in extraordinary condition, possibly preserved by chance in a roll or drawer, that immediately raised eyebrows when weighed, analyzed, and examined under advanced imaging, revealing characteristics that defied standard references and prompting quiet interest from high-level collectors who recognized that if authentic, the coin represented a once-in-a-generation discovery. And rather than appearing in public auctions, where scrutiny and skepticism could diminish its mystique, it is said to have changed hands privately, its value climbing steadily as each expert confirmed its uniqueness without being able to definitively classify it, and this secrecy only amplified its legend, because in numismatics what is unseen often commands more fascination than what is displayed, and the idea that such a coin could exist unnoticed for years reinforces the dream that extraordinary value can hide within ordinary objects. And the $43 million figure associated with this penny reflects not just rarity but convergence. The convergence of historical timing, transitional metallurgy, undocumented mint practices, and exceptional preservation, all wrapped into a single copper cent that survived a period when countless others were melted, damaged, or spent without a second thought. And beyond its physical attributes, the coin's symbolic weight is immense, because 1946 was a year of rebuilding, of soldiers returning home, of factories retooling for civilian life, and of a nation redefining itself after global conflict. And this penny circulated during those first steps back into peace, passing through hands that were reshaping daily life, making it a silent witness to one of the most transformative periods in modern history. And that connection to human experience adds an emotional layer to its value that numbers alone cannot explain. And when collectors speak of this penny, they are not just talking about copper and design, but about resilience, transition, and the hidden complexity of seemingly simple things. And while skeptics may question valuations that reach into the tens of millions, seasoned collectors understand that the highest levels of the market operate under different rules, where singular pieces with unmatched stories command prices based on desire, symbolism, and the impossibility of replacement. And the fact that the legendary 1946 no-mint mark-wheat penny has never been conclusively documented in public references ensures that its story remains alive, debated, and endlessly fascinating, inspiring people across generations to search through old jars, inherited collections, and forgotten rolls in the hope that they might uncover a piece of history hiding in plain sight. And even though the odds are infinitesimal, the very possibility keeps the legend burning, reminding us that history does not always announce itself loudly but often whispers through ordinary objects waiting to be rediscovered. The story of the 1946 no-mint Mark I cent wheat penny. It's incredible to imagine that while the world celebrated the end of global conflict and began adjusting to peacetime economies, this tiny coin was quietly witnessing history, slipping from pocket to pocket, crossing hands in grocery stores, banks, and post offices, surviving the countless exchanges that would have erased almost any trace of its uniqueness. And the more you consider its journey, the more remarkable it becomes, because most pennies from that era were spent, melted, or corroded beyond recognition, yet somehow this rare specimen endured, creating a sense of awe among collectors who understand that survival alone does not guarantee legendary status. It's the combination of preservation, rarity, historical context, and anomalies that propels a coin to multimillion-dollar heights. And in the case of the 1946 no-mint Mark penny, every small detail, from the subtle variance in the thickness of the letters to the faint but precise differences in the wheat stalks on the reverse, tells a story of a mint operating under unusual conditions, where even minor deviations could escape notice, and decades later, these deviations have become the very reason collectors are willing to invest tens of millions of dollars to acquire what is effectively a fragment of American industrial history. And it's worth noting that the 1946 Philadelphia Mint was operating under significant constraints as it transitioned from wartime production back to standard operations, a period when die usage, planchet preparation, and press calibration were all subject to human error, and those errors, when preserved in exceptional condition, are what elevate a coin from common change to priceless artifact, and historians argue that each surviving example of the 1946 no-mint Mark wheat penny carries within it a record of that transitional moment, almost like a fingerprint of the mint itself, frozen in metal, silently documenting the stresses, adjustments, and decisions made by the minting workforce during a pivotal moment in history. And because official records rarely capture small-scale experiments or anomalies, these coins offer an irreplaceable glimpse into processes that otherwise would have been lost to time. And numismatic experts point out that the anomalies on the coin, such as tiny variations in die alignment, the subtle shifts in date positioning, and minute irregularities in the lettering, suggest careful observation of this penny can reveal the very hand of the mint workers who created it. And that makes the coin far more than currency. It's a narrative, a tangible link to a post-war America, and a collectible whose significance is measured as much in story and context as in copper content. And over the years, speculation about the coin has grown, fueled by rumors of private sales, whispered valuations, and the occasional appearance of similar, but slightly less extraordinary specimens, each time reigniting fascination and driving interest in searches through attic drawers, coin rolls, and inherited collections. And collectors often recount how simply holding such a coin evokes a sense of connection with the past, reminding them that the objects we pass over daily can harbor histories far greater than their face value. And the legend is further enhanced by the fact that while many modern collectors can authenticate, grade, and trace coins with advanced technology, the 1946 no-mint Mark wheat penny exists in that rare category where certain mysteries may never be fully unraveled, leaving room for debate, wonder, and continued intrigue. And that uncertainty is part of its appeal, because rarity alone is valuable, but mystery multiplies value exponentially, capturing imagination and inspiring dreams of discovery. And in the world of high-end numismatics, the coin represents the pinnacle of what collectors seek, an object that is simultaneously accessible through decades-old circulation and inaccessible due to its extreme rarity and private ownership, and as auction records, private sales, and numismatic journals reveal, the 4-decade journey of this coin from ordinary circulation to multimillion-dollar legend has been punctuated with moments of speculation, investigation, and careful authentication, each step reinforcing the narrative that a single, seemingly insignificant penny can defy expectations and embody an entire historical moment. And the cultural resonance of the 1946 penny is significant because it reminds us that history is often embedded in the mundane, waiting for the discerning eye to recognize it, transforming ordinary objects into extraordinary artifacts that capture the imagination of both collectors and historians. And enthusiasts often point out that the coin's journey mirrors that of the nation itself, navigating recovery, transition, and opportunity. And in that sense, owning or even studying the coin feels like holding a piece of America's post-war story, a tangible link to decisions, actions, and circumstances that shaped everyday life in 1946. And the coin's valuation at $43 million does not merely reflect rarity, but encapsulates the convergence of historical significance, material survival, and the thrill of the unknown. Because even with advanced imaging, metallurgical testing, and expert grading, certain details remain elusive, keeping the story alive and constantly evolving. And collectors continue to speculate on how many other hidden examples might exist, buried in jars, drawers, or old coin collections, waiting to be discovered, each potential find reigniting the dream that an ordinary hand can stumble upon extraordinary wealth and history. And that excitement fuels searches, discussions, and the ever-growing fascination with wheat pennies, particularly those from transitional years like 1946, where post-war production, returning mint operations, and leftover wartime processes created the perfect storm for anomalies, experiments, and ultra-rare specimens. And the impact of this coin on the collector community cannot be overstated, because it has inspired articles, videos, and discussions that analyze mint records, alloy composition, die wear patterns, and anecdotal reports, all in pursuit of understanding how and why a coin with no mint mark from 1946 could become a $43 million legend. And for new collectors, this story serves as a powerful reminder that the coins in their possession may contain secrets, histories, and possibilities far beyond what the face value suggests. And even casual observers are captivated by the narrative, because it challenges our assumptions about value, rarity, and the hidden potential in everyday objects. And that is why the 1946 no-mint Mark 1 cent wheat penny remains a centerpiece in discussions of historical numismatics, a symbol of survival, mystery, and immense collector passion. And as long as interest in coins continues, this penny will remain one of the most sought-after, discussed, and revered pieces of American history, proving that even the smallest artifacts can carry stories that echo through generations, shaping how we perceive history, scarcity, and value, and reminding us that sometimes the most ordinary objects hold the most extraordinary secrets. And if you want to continue exploring incredible coins, legendary anomalies, and hidden fortunes in everyday change, make sure you like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications to never miss another mind-blowing story where the smallest pennies reveal the largest treasures.